You already think you know the animal in the thumbnail. Small, skittish, pops open a neck frill, spits black venom in some guy's face. That's the one from the movie, and almost everything about it is made up. The real thing was 7 meters long, bigger than the car you drive, with a heavy build, powerful legs, and 2 tall, bony crests running down the top of its skull. No frill, no venom. And it wasn't hiding in some jungle on a fictional island. Its bones came out of northern Arizona, and a Navajo man named Jesse Williams is the reason we know about it at all. So yeah, put that animal in the middle of a quiet street in Phoenix at 2 in the morning, headlights on it, and you've got something a lot worse than the movie ever gave you. That's number 1, and we're building up to it. Because before Arizona was desert, it was a swamp, then a coastline, then a sheet of grassland at the edge of the ice. 11 monsters, all of them real, all of them standing on ground you've driven across without a second thought. Number 11. Picture a swamp, not a desert, a swamp, somewhere in eastern Arizona about 220 million years ago. And moving through it in a herd are these squat, barrel-chested animals with beaks and a pair of stubby tusks poking down from the upper jaw. They're about the size of a cow, but built lower and heavier, rooting through mud for plants. That's Prehistoric. And it wasn't a dinosaur or a reptile. It belonged to a weird branch that's actually closer to us than to anything with scales. Here's the wild part. At a single spot near St. John's, Arizona, paleontologists pulled out the remains of more than 40 of them, all jumbled together in one place. 40. So this wasn't some rare oddity you'd get lucky to see. If you'd been standing in Arizona back then, these things were the cattle of the landscape, and something was eating them constantly. That's actually why the site matters so much. Where you get a pile of herbivores, you get the predators that came to feed on them. And that one Arizona quarry ended up handing us a big chunk of everything we know about who else was living here at the time. Half this list came out of the same neighborhood. Number 10. Now let's talk about shoulders. Because there was an animal walking that same Arizona swamp with spikes coming out of its shoulders that were nearly half a meter long. Postosuchus, 4.5 meters, covered head to tail in interlocking bony plates like a living suit of armor, with those 2 absurd spikes jutting sideways off its neck. And here's the joke of it. With all that hardware, it ate plants. That whole rig, the armor, the spikes, the reinforced back, existed for one reason. Something out there was big enough and mean enough that a 4.5 meter animal needed to look like a medieval weapon just to make it through the afternoon. Keep that in mind. You'll meet what it was afraid of at number 3. Number 9. If you saw one of these in a river, you'd say crocodile and you'd walk away, and you'd be completely wrong. Phytosaurs looked like crocodiles the way a shark looks like a dolphin. Same shape, totally different animal, built independently. Long jaws, armored back, lurking half-submerged, the whole thing. The tell is in one detail, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Their nostrils weren't at the tip of the snout. They sat way back on a raised bump right between the eyes, almost on the forehead. So this thing could lie under the water with only a little knuckle of skull breaking the surface, breathing, watching you with the entire meter of jaw completely invisible below. Arizona's version got to about 7 meters. Real crocodiles wouldn't take over this niche for another 50 million years. The phytosaurs had it first, and they had it locked. Number 8. Go stand in Petrified Forest National Park, and you're standing in the wreckage of all this. Those famous stone logs scattered across the Badlands? Those are real trees, conifers, hauled downriver in floods 220 million years ago, and buried in mud before they could rot. And running between them was Dilophosaurus, about 3 meters nose to tail, but light, hollow-boned, maybe 20 kilos soaking wet. Long neck, long tail, thin snapping jaws. This was one of the very first dinosaurs, back when dinosaurs were the underdogs, the small, fast things darting around the ankles of much bigger reptiles. Nobody looking at that swamp would have picked them to win anything. They were quick, they were nervous, and they were nowhere near the top of the food chain, which makes what happened next kind of unbelievable. And there's a detail about them that still gets argued over. At one famous bone bed, some skeletons were found with what looked like tiny colophysis bones sitting inside the rib cage, right where the stomach would be. For decades, that got written up as cannibalism. These things ate their own young. Later work went back over the specimens and decided the little bones were probably small crocodile reptiles, not baby dinosaurs. Probably. The reputation stuck anyway. Number 7. 3.5 meters. That's the wingspan we're talking about. A bird with wings wider than most rooms in your house, gliding over the Grand Canyon. Merriam's Teratorn was a scavenger built like a condor's nightmare, with a long hooked beak and enough wing to ride the canyon thermals for hours without a single flap. And we don't know about it from some dig site in the middle of nowhere. We know because of caves. High, dry caves in the canyon walls where the bones just sat, protected from rain for tens of thousands of years. Same caves, incidentally, where people later found little figurines made of split twigs, folded into the shapes of animals, left there deliberately by humans 4,000 years ago. Nobody had seen a Teratorn in 7,000 years by that point. The last of them died out around 11,000 years ago, once the big carcasses they lived off stopped turning up. But think about what that bird's job actually was. It didn't hunt. It waited. Which means for a Teratorn to make a living at all, something had to be dying out there constantly, at size, all across this landscape. That wingspan is basically a receipt for how much big meat used to be walking around Arizona. Number 6. So there's a cave in the Grand Canyon called Rampart Cave, and in 1936, people got in there and found something genuinely absurd. A deposit of ground sloth dung 4 meters thick. Not fossilized, dried. Layer on layer of it, built up over 20,000 years, so well preserved you could pull it apart and identify the exact plants the animal had been eating on a given afternoon. The Shasta ground sloth was about the size of a big dog, but stocky and heavy, with curved claws and a long tongue for stripping desert plants, and it used that cave as a shelter for 200 centuries. It's the single best record of what one animal ate anywhere on Earth. And in 1976, someone got in past the gate, and it caught fire, and it burned for months. Firefighters flew in and pumped it with foam. Most of it was already gone. Number 5. Here's a question nobody's fully answered. The long-necked dinosaurs, the giants, the ones everybody pictures, mostly show up in the fossil record of the southern continents first. So how did their family get a foothold in North America? Arizona has a piece of the answer, and its name is Sonorasaurus. About 4 meters, walked on all fours but could rear up, long neck, small head, and this one strange feature. Powerful muscular hands with a big thumb claw. Grasping hands. On a plant eater. It came out of the Kayenta Rocks in northern Arizona, and what it tells us is that these animals showed up in North America in waves. Not one migration, arriving after an extinction cleared the field and finding a continent with nothing big left to stop them. Every 100-ton giant that came later starts with something roughly the size of a horse, standing in Arizona, with hands. Number 4. In 1994, a geology student named Richard Thompson was hiking in the Sonoran Desert southeast of Tucson and found bone sticking out of a hillside. He figured it was petrified wood. It sat there. It took 4 more years and an actual paleontologist to work out what he'd actually walked into. A brachiosaur, a long-necked giant that held its neck up like a crane instead of out like a bridge, about 15 meters long and roughly 3 stories tall at the head. They named it Sonorasaurus, and it's Arizona's own. 95 million years ago, that patch of desert was a green floodplain with rivers running through it. And this thing was standing there eating the tops off trees nothing else on the continent could reach. A kid found it and thought it was a log. Number 3. Remember the armored one with the shoulder spikes? This is what it was scared of. Postosuchus was the apex predator of Triassic Arizona. 4 to 5 meters, deep skull, blade-shaped serrated teeth, and heavy enough that it hit like a truck. And here's the thing, people get backwards. It wasn't a dinosaur. It was a crocodile reptile, from the same branch that gave us alligators. And for tens of millions of years, animals like this were beating the dinosaurs comprehensively. The dinosaurs were the small ones, the nervous ones, the ones getting eaten. Then, the end of the Triassic came. The volcanoes went off, the climate broke, and the crocodile giants died, and the little dinosaurs didn't. That's the whole story. Dinosaurs didn't conquer the planet. They inherited it, because everything that was beating them dropped dead first. Number 2. Now come forward to about 13,000 years ago in southeastern Arizona, near a town now called Navajo. A rancher named Mark Navarrete found bones washing out of an arroyo after a storm, and when researchers dug it out, they found a Columbian mammoth, 4 meters at the shoulder, tusks longer than a car, the biggest land animal on the continent. And lodged in among the ribs were 8 stone spear points. 8, not scattered nearby, in it. A few kilometers away at another site, more mammoths, more points, and a fire pit. These are some of the clearest pieces of evidence anywhere on Earth that the first Americans hunted these animals, and they're sitting in Arizona ranch country, and I want you to sit with the scale of that for a second. No horses, no metal, no guns, a handful of people on foot, with sharpened stone tied to wooden shafts, walking up on something 4 meters tall that could have ended all of them in about 9 seconds, and doing it on purpose more than once, because the fire pits and the butchered bone say they came back and did it again. Within a couple of thousand years, the mammoths were gone. And number 1, Dilophosaurus. So let's fix what the movie broke. 7 meters, weighing around 400 kilos, standing well over head height. This was the biggest predator in North America at the time, no contest. Strong, thick-boned, with a long jaw and a distinctive notch behind the front teeth. There was never any frill. That's pure invention. There's no evidence it spat anything at anybody. What it did have were those 2 thin, bony crests running along the top of its skull, side by side, arcing up like a pair of half plates. And honestly, we still argue about what they were for. Too fragile for fighting. Almost certainly display. Signaling, showing off, saying, "I'm here," across a valley. It was found in 1940 by Jesse Williams on the Navajo Nation, and it lived in a landscape of dunes and seasonal rivers in northern Arizona, good at 90 million years ago, a place you can drive through today in about an hour. So next time you're stuck in traffic on the 10, or walking out to your car in the dark, or hiking somewhere in the Red Rock, that ground has held a herd of tusked beasts, a river monster breathing through its forehead, a bird wider than your kitchen, and a 7-meter predator with 2 crests on its head. And if you want to know what that last one's world actually felt like, the heat, the dunes, the hunt, the very last days of the last of them, I've got that story waiting for you. Go find out.